Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. The Supreme Court has delivered a historic verdict. It has upheld the government's abrogation of Article 370. But the Supreme Court has also shown the way ahead, the restoration of statehood and the holding of fresh elections. These will be decided by the union government over the next few months. Now bear in mind that this is a very unique situation. A state has never been bifurcated and turned into a union territory before. But the apex court is clear on the outcome and the road ahead. So what happens next? Joining me to discuss this are Mr. Mohd Amin, former Joint Director and Chief of Protocol, Election Commission of India, and Dr. Rajiv Nanda, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, and my colleagues Aditya Raj Kaul and Ashok Bagriya. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Mr. Amin, what's next after this verdict? What are the next steps to statehood and elections? Break it down for us.
I'm sure that the government is going to be held a poll in the State Assembly of the J&K, and before the 30th September, as the Supreme Court has given the verdict about the election and direction to the Election Commission of India to clear everything and done the elections in the state before that. As you know that in Election Commission, we have already all preparations done before that, like delimitations and reservation of the seats and everything. And we have all exercises completed. So we are not in trouble to do election as soon as possible. We are ready and our system is ready for the poll in the state of J&K.
Ashok, how important was today's verdict in the context of, the fact that this is something this is ground that we've never, walked on before. First the state is turned into a union territory, it's bifurcated, and then you have elections announced, and then statehood, in fact. How is this going to play out in the next couple of months?
Firstly, that number one, it's a very important milestone as far as the Indian judiciary is concerned. Now, this is a question which has been waiting to be adjudicated for the last 75 years. The Supreme Court today has put everything to rest here by saying that Article 370 was a temporary provision. The second thing is that they have said that as far as statehood is concerned, the central government should endeavor to return Jammu and Kashmir back to full statehood.
Right.
But the third thing they have said is that you have to conduct elections to the Legislative Assembly by 30th September 2024. Now here is the caveat. The Supreme Court does not say that by 30th September 2024 you return to full statehood.
Right.
The court says that under the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act, the elections will have to be held. So what we are really looking at is by September 30th, 2024, is that there could be a legislative assembly.
Yeah.
But that legislative assembly will not be that of a state. It could be a legislative assembly, still be a union territory. So we could see an administrator, a legislative assembly, a situation similar to what we see in Delhi.
Right.
So where you have a chief minister, elected chief minister, but at the same time you have a lieutenant governor who also calls the shots in the state. So this is the scenario. What I'm looking at is by September 30, 2024, we could have a structure in place, something similar to that in Delhi, where the LG will be there, and most importantly, the LG or the governor, whatever they want to call it, or the administrator, would still exercise functions and control over the law and order situation in this particularly volatile union territory, I would say.
Right. Dr. Nanda, was the court very ambiguous about the way ahead? As in, it's left a lot of leeway for the government to decide, right? I mean, it's given a time frame of about 9 months, but obviously it's left all this for the government to do. Do you agree with what my colleague Ashok here says, that it's quite possible it could be a Delhi model of a half state with a legislative?
Yeah, Ashok has put it very beautifully. See, this is a situation, things are looking very hunky-dory at the moment.
Right.
Supreme Court has passed an order, hold elections by 30th September. Now, elections to what? To the UT or to the state assembly?
Right.
Yes, the state government will come, the central government or whatever deciding authority will be there. Just now somebody from the Election Commission said that they are ready with the delimitation exercise and all that.
Right.
But the point is, if the central government puts its foot down, that the atmosphere in the state is not ripe enough to hold elections, they can still defer it. The Supreme Court has only said, make an endeavor.
Right.
It is not a direction that you necessarily will have to hold. If they put up some material which is good enough to defer it, they can still defer it.
Right.
And whether the elections will be held as Ashok has just said, whether to the Legislative Assembly of the state or the Legislative Assembly of the UT. So I have my big doubts that we'll have elections by September 24, even to UT.
Right.
This would continue, because otherwise, if the situation is ripe enough, the Home Minister at that point of time in 2019, when it was bifurcated into two parts, it was assured that this is a temporary phase, and as soon as possible, as soon as the normalcy returns, the full statehood will be granted.
Right.
I mean, nothing, I just visited last week also, I was there in Srinagar. Nothing is appearing on the face of it that the central government is interested in holding the elections there. Because otherwise, if they hold the elections, all the control is going to go away from them.
Right. Aditya, you've had your, sorry, Dr. Nanda, I'm just going to get Aditya in on this point. You've had your ear on the ground on this, Aditya. You've tracking this, whether the state will hold elections or not, whether the government will actually hold elections or not. What are your sources telling you right now?
Well, firstly, Sandeep, this is a historic verdict. Many had predicted that it could be some kind of a balancing act that the Supreme Court could do. Many expected, knowing the Chief Justice, D.Y. Chandrachud as well, that, he could strike it down. All kinds of rumors were doing the rounds. Yeah. But I'm glad, and I expected, and I said this earlier in the show as well, early morning before the verdict, that it would be something positive. The larger call, the larger national interest would be also kept in mind by the judiciary. And I'm glad that this is a verdict which is unanimous in nature.
Right.
On the elections, I am pretty much sure that there is no pressure to hold elections right now.
Right.
There's a lot of cleansing that is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. One, related to corruption that was ingrained in the system. Second, to actually eradicate the jihadi mindset and the radicals from the system itself. That's why you see these orders every passing day of, a lot of people in the government being fired for holding views that are against the country at different levels. So, personally, I believe that the government could test waters when the general elections are held around April, May 2024, along with the rest of the country, and thereafter take a call whether the state elections can happen, the assembly elections, and how would that be facilitated, because that would require a huge security bandobast. But on the factor of statehood, again, I think elections is something still the government and the people would want at some stage. But I'm not sure or so sure about the statehood demand, because one of the major factors is law and order. And law and order has to be with center. I am of firm belief that one of the reasons that we had aggravated situation of violence in Jammu and Kashmir was, one, because of 370 and how it gave some kind of an intellectual support to the local politicians and separatists to further their agenda and keep people engaged and perhaps fooled into this dream of 370 and 35A and autonomy and self-independence. But at the same time, the law and order was a state subject. So every time, for example, stone pelters were arrested or antisocial elements were arrested under some law, you had the state government, for instance, Mehbooba Mufti, when she was the chief minister, who said that release them. You cannot act against them. We had another dramatic case of Major Aditya, who had to fire at the antisocial elements when they almost were about to be lynched, and Mehbooba Mufti registered an FIR against the Indian Army, and that case went up to the Supreme Court of India. So there have been a lot of clashes in this regard, and law and order has to be with the center. So as of now, I think it's a very historic judgment, because not only has the judgment given a legal sanctity to Modi government's decision on 5th August 2019, but it has also given a clarity to the local politicians that there's no way out. 370 is something of the past. You need to look towards a future that does not involve 370, 35A autonomy or self-determination. It only involves a new politics in Jammu and Kashmir for the benefit of the people.
So Ashok, this ball is very much in the government's court, it looks like. I mean, it's left to the government. It's like a directive principles of state policy, right?
In fact, there was an interesting observation by the Chief Justice of India while he was reading his verdict, was that some matters are policy issues.
Yeah.
And the court will not step into the domain where policies are being made. So they have kind of kept away from that.
Right.
Now, even as far as statehood is concerned, they have just expressed the hope that, saying that we have been given an assurance by the central government that as soon as the conditions are conducive, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir will return back to statehood.
Right.
But one criticism of this verdict clearly has to come is the fact that the Supreme Court has not adjudicated on the question of reducing a state to 2 union territories. Now, you said rightly in the beginning that this is for the first time it has happened, but the Supreme Court sidestepped this issue by saying that we are not going to get into it because we have an assurance from the central government. So we are not adjudicating on this point of law whether the central government could have done it. Now, at some point in time, this question will have to be decided, maybe 10, 15, 20 years later. What really happens is that it gives the central government unbridled power to turn states into union territories. Now, this is today we are witnessing a case of Jammu and Kashmir. Tomorrow it could be any other state. It could be reduced.
So you're saying it goes against the concept of federalism?
It does go against the concept of federalism. However, the only beautiful thing which emerged out of this judgment was the whole idea of integration, which the Supreme Court said that the underlying feature of everything is integration. Number one, Jammu Kashmir, when it signed the instrument of accession, they surrendered their sovereignty to the government of India. Now, Article 370 was a temporary provision to tide over situations and circumstances as they existed then.
It was a bridge from
the
past to the present.
It was a temporary provision and it has to be done away once the objects have been achieved. Now here the central government in 2019 believed that, look, the objectives of 370 have been accomplished. Now comes the process of integration. So for the larger goal of integrating this territory, this controversial area, the government of India took this decision, and today the Supreme Court has said we find nothing wrong legally with what the central government has done.
Dr. Amin, so we've kind of established the fact that there's no pressure really on the government to hold elections. While there is a recommendation for September 2024, there's nothing binding. It's all left to the government. It can choose when to hold elections or even indeed defer them. But is there anything that says that elections, is there a time limit for elections to be held in the normal course? I mean, bear in mind this is a very unique kind of set of circumstances.
No, in case of Jammu and Kashmir, UT, the Ladakh is separate and JNK is separate now. 2 UTs are there. So the Supreme Court has clear for the JNK only, and he has not included the Ladakh in that state. So we are not in a hurry as per the ordinance of the Government of India and passed by the Parliament. So its direction by the Government of India can give to the and agree with the selection and give the direction to the Election Commission. You can go ahead for the election poll. So in that case, we have to intervene. Otherwise, till date, we have not received any communication for the Election Commission to go for the election. So just we can, and in case of the elections, Election Commission is always going to the state and see the situation, and always briefing done by the Chief Secretary and the Home Secretary and other officials to see the situation of the state. The election could be conducted or not. So our side and Election Commission side is everything clear for the election, but they are waiting for the government side to go through from the Ministry of Home Affairs or the Government of India. Otherwise, everything is okay. We can go for the elections. but we have to wait for the government orders from the state side and the central side both.
Right. Dr. Nanda, what are the other big issues that today's verdict really throws up? Is there something that's going to hold good, be cited in the future as well? What are the big takeaways from today's judgment, according to you?
Sovereignty, there cannot be two different sovereignty concepts.
Right.
Sovereignty of India is the first and the last. What the Supreme Court has said, that there cannot be a separate sovereignty of the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
Once the instrument of accession has been signed, it is total surrender of their own sovereignty, so-called sovereignty, to the government of India. But now they are part of it. This is first part of it, which will be cited always, like Keshwanand Bharti's case.
Yes.
That basic structure and all that.
Right.
This will be cited, and then the other part, which is very important, and I'm still to go through this judgment in detail, but I was hearing while this was being delivered, is that they said that Article 370 was a temporary phase.
Yes.
It's been almost 75 years that this temporary phase was going on. This is a very important observation. Mind it, there are other temporary provisions in the constitution, like reservation.
Yeah.
That too was temporary. Initially it was for 10 years, then extended another 10 years, then yet another 10 years, and every time it is 10 years. God knows when the end is going to come and something is going to be done, because this government is doing very good job about selecting these temporary provisions and then trying to address the issues as far as possible.
Right.
This was perhaps the first one, and Supreme Court has agreed with them that temporary is temporary. It cannot be permanent. It is irrespective whether there is this Constituent Assembly or not.
Right.
I mean, the Act of the Government of India cannot be stopped. So this is the second part, which I just said, that temporary means temporary, and the government has all the authority to scrap the temporary provision. This is going to be cited in future cases, certainly.
Right. Right. What are the possible future cases that this judgment would be cited? I mean, would it be like, for instance, hypothetical scenario of a couple of states getting together and saying that, look, we're very unhappy with the state of the union and we'd like to secede? Would that be?
No. You see, if you are asking, if I'm correctly understanding you, see, we have this federal structure to be followed, but we are more of a quasi-federal.
Right.
Still, the central government holds the power, but this power is held in a restricted and limited manner. Once the state becomes UT, like Lakshadweep or Delhi or till very recently Goa, etc., Daman, the authority of the state government ceases there.
Right.
It is immaterial what kind of legislative assembly you have and whatever name you are happy to give it. Like in Delhi, you see that the fights are going every day to Supreme Court for decision of even appointment of the Chief Secretary. So the same kind of things are going to be raised if the central government is not going to return the statehood to the Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
In the near future. There are going to be protests, there are going to be future litigation for implementing that assurance and saying that things have returned to normalcy almost.
Right.
Now it cannot be, whatever was temporary at that point of time is still temporary provision of making it a UT. Please return the normalcy, return the statehood. These are the possible things which will certainly, and as I just said, I am not sure that that the elections will be held by September 2024. Lot is going to depend on the Lok Sabha elections.
Yes.
The government is going to take
As
the
Aditya
call
was
at that point
pointing out.
of time.
Yes.
And because these holding elections and for returning to the statehood, these are the possible litigations which will arise now, which I expect that should be rising.
Aditya, in fact, there was another very interesting point that was made by Justice Kaul, where he recommended the creation of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like the one in South Africa. How significant is that observation, and what are the chances that the government could actually set something up like this? It's been discussed in the past.
Well, Sandeep, it's massive. Honestly, I, in my previous avatar as a student activist, back in 18 years ago, had been campaigning for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a Kashmiri, because particularly the Kashmiri Pandit community
Yeah.
has suffered a lot. And in these last 30 to 35 years, the cases have not been investigated.
Yes.
In a lot of instances, FIRs have not been registered. So the community has been demanding that, we need to know the truth.
Right.
Even if justice cannot be delivered 35 years later, at least form a commission
Yeah.
which at least listens to us, and there's a historical record
Yeah.
of what happened to us, and give it a term. It
Right.
could be ethnic cleansing, it could be genocide,
Sure.
it could be merely forced exodus.
Right.
So one part is the Kashmiri Hindu community.
Yeah.
Second is, let's not forget, a lot of Muslims have also died
Yes.
in this entire process, where anybody who is seen as an Indian in Kashmir, who is seen with the Indian army or with the Indian
targeted
Constitutional
by
Parliament,
terrorists,
is
of
targeted
course.
by terrorists. Then the Sikh community,
Yes.
which has met a lot of massacres, the
Yeah.
Chatti Singhpura, etc.
Yeah.
So a lot of people combined in Jammu and Kashmir have suffered.
Right.
And Justice Sanjay Krishan Kaul himself is a Kashmiri.
Yes.
He has his ancestral, legacy in Kashmir. His grandfather was, I believe, a diwan in the
Right,
Raja's court. So
right.
he also understands the pain and anguish of the common Kashmiris. And I really hope that the central government, Modi government, takes a cue from this
Yeah.
and holds a commission, because 35 years later, they have started the process of, again, opening a case, Mr. Ganju's case, who was a
Yes.
judge
Yes.
who had given the conviction for Maqbool Butt's hanging. So if that can happen, if the Sikh cases can be investigated 40 years later,
Right.
then why not have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Because, justice will only happen when there's a dialogue.
Right.
And, there's a patience in the government, in the administration, to listen to all shades of opinion, from Kashmiris, to
Right.
Dogras, to Paharis, to even people from Ladakh. Because
Right.
Jammu and Ladakh has this, grievance that they've been discriminated upon for all these 75 years. So I hope that this paves the way not just to end separatism, terrorism, and the jihadi mindset that has been there, cultivated for a very long time, an ecosystem that was let to grow, but also now gives peace a chance. And peace will only happen when this truth, reconciliation, and justice happens.
Ashok, you think this is a big step forward?
I just want to add to what
Yeah.
they said. Now, what Justice Kaul is saying in his judgment is that the people of this state
Right.
or the union territory need a healing touch.
Yeah.
It's time that something is done to put an end to whatever has happened. Now,
Right.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a right step, according to me, in
Yeah.
the direction, because what I have seen a lot of cases from Jammu and Kashmir, which have been, reopened, tried to be reinvestigated,
Yes.
but nothing has happened. However, there have been cases, tons and tons of cases, where even when the trial proceedings went on, not a single witness came forward and testified. Now, 20 years later, 25 years later, if the situation is made conducive in the Union Territory and people are willing to come forward and testify, what is wrong in having those trials being reopened? Let justice have a chance, and that is exactly what Justice Kaul is saying, that by the way of this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, give it a shot, give it a healing touch. So I believe that whatever he is saying, although he did say that I am being a little sentimental when I am saying this,
Yeah.
considering that he himself is a Kashmiri,
Yeah.
and he's very closely associated. I know once a month he always travels to Srinagar and Baramulla.
Right.
He has his ancestral properties there, and he's very closely connected with Jammu and Kashmir. So coming from a man who is rooted with the soil of Jammu and Kashmir, it's a huge, huge statement, and I'm pretty sure that the government of India is going to take a cue from what he said.
Right. Dr. Nanda, you see many such other similar demands being made because, in the last 75 years, we've had horrific massacres, of the Sikh community, particularly in Delhi. There's no justice being delivered to them as well. There have been cases in the northeast, all over India practically. Is this the right time for the government to set up a mechanism like this so that you can address all these grievances that have been kind of neglected over the last couple of years?
See, taking clue from today's judgment, yes, certainly this is the right time when the government can, if they want to bring normalcy to the valley, to Jammu area, that such kind of commissions should be, no matter what the outcome will be, because if it is 30 years old matter, 40 years old matter, God knows from where the evidences are going to become. But then nevertheless, they can at least put some balm over the burns of the affected people. That yes, we are trying to, that do help you. And that is going to go a long way. This is the government of India, the present day executive should take a clue from the today's judgment, though not specifically said, as Justice Kaul was also getting very emotional about it.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there is no direction. But the government of India should take a clue from today's judgment and should act. I mean, in my speaking personally for myself, I feel this is the right time that they should take it and take it further. Establish commissions and all that, open cases, no matter what happens, at least that is going to create a good atmosphere, peaceful atmosphere in the mind of those people, the Kashmiri Pandits, the people, the other people, Sikhs even, everybody around there. It is not, today the atmosphere there is of a calm which is forced. Today it is not a happy calm there.
Right.
If you want to get the state in a real happy way, then these kind of measures are required, irrespective of what the results will be.
Right. Mr. Amin, you believe this is the case? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, need of the hour?
It's a very good decision, and the government should do it. Actually, everybody has appreciated for the judgment of the Supreme Court of India today, and everybody has the hope on that. And everybody is looking for that. After the judgment, the government of India is going to take a note on that, and they have to implement or not. That is the good for the country and good for the citizens of the Kashmir also. They were neglected so long back.
Right.
They get the right there.
Afraid I'm totally out of time, but thank you so much, gentlemen, for throwing light on this road ahead for us. Next 9 months are going to be very interesting. We're sitting here discussing a very historic verdict. As Dr. Nanda was saying, this is going to be discussed for decades from now, like the Keshwanandan Bharati. But thank you very much, and we'll keep coming back to you for news and insights, gentlemen. Ashok, Aditya, want to thank you for your insights as well. Now, former Pakistani Prime Minister Naas Sharif said recently that he was ousted because he opposed the Kargil War in 1999. Now, Sharif was in exile in the UK and has recently returned to Islamabad. It seems he's back in favor with the Pakistani army, who see him as an alternative to Imran Khan. Elections are due in Pakistan next year, and the army wants someone who's acceptable to India to resume a dialogue that's been stalled for several years. Deepak Badana has this explainer on the many lives of Nawaz Sharif and what a hybrid regime that's in place in Pakistan really means.
Thrice he was elected to the post of Prime Minister, and each time he was deposed without being able to complete a single term in office. Now, as he plans to make yet another comeback, News9 looks at the many lives of former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. On 7 December 2023, the Islamabad High Court decided to hear former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's appeal against his conviction in the Al Azizia steel mill corruption case. Sharif was appealing the verdict from an accountability court that sentenced him to 7 years in prison and disqualified him from holding public office for 10 years. This comes just 1 month after the former Prime Minister returned from exile. Hailing from a Kashmiri Bhat Muslim family with interests in the steel and sugar trade, Nawaz Sharif was born on December 25, 1949 in Lahore. Sharif entered politics in the 1980s, aligning himself with the military regime of General Zia-ul Haq and becoming the Chief Minister of Punjab in 1985. He then became the Prime Minister of Pakistan for the first time in 1990, leading the Islami Jamhuri Ittihad coalition. This tenure was characterized by economic reforms, but also clashes with the Pakistan Army and then President of Pakistan, Ghulam Ishaq Khan, who eventually dissolved Sharif's government. Sharif next became Prime Minister in 1997. His second term in office saw Pakistan successfully test a nuclear device in 1998. Sharif also welcomed the Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee on his historic visit to Pakistan. The overture was, however, derailed by the Kargil conflict, and Sharif was deposed yet again when he tried to dismiss the Pakistan Army Chief General Pervez Musharraf. Instead, Sharif would be arrested by the military, and an army tribunal awarded him a life sentence on charges of kidnapping, attempted murder, hijacking and terrorism, and corruption. It was only the intervention of Saudi Arabia and the United States that saved him. Nawaz Sharif would return to Pakistan in 2007. Then spending 5 years in the opposition, Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz swept the elections in 2013 and Sharif received an unprecedented third term as the Prime Minister of Pakistan. The third term saw a focus on infrastructure and energy projects, notably CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But the Panama Paper controversy led to the disqualification by the Supreme Court in 2017 and subsequently exile. So what brings Nawaz Sharif back to Pakistan and what lies ahead for him? When Sharif's government was dismissed in 2017, power was handed over to PTI chief Imran Khan. But this experiment failed. Imran Khan proved to be too erratic and troublesome for the Pakistan establishment. He too was dismissed with a no-confidence vote. In his stead, Nawaz Sharif's younger brother was elected as PM of a hybrid regime that was ostensibly democratic but was in fact controlled by the Pak army. Now with the hybrid regime firmly in place, Nawaz Sharif has returned to Pakistan yet again. In his speeches, Sharif has spoken not just about becoming Prime Minister yet again, but also about punishing those responsible for his victimization. What that means for the Pakistan establishment and for Nawaz Sharif himself, we'll have to wait and watch.
And while on Pakistan, Islamabad's expulsion of over 1 million Afghans is the 21st century's largest forced expulsion of civilians. It is an AF-packed time bomb, as our upcoming story says. Let's watch.
पाकिस्तान में बदअमनी फैलाने में एक बड़ा किरदार गैर कानूनी तारीक वतन का है। इसलिए रियासत पाकिस्तान ने इन अफराद को 1 नवंबर से वापस अपने ममालिक में भेजने का फैसला किया।
They are doing this out of desperation. In fact, far from it, they're going to swell the ranks of the TTP. It is a self-destructive policy which I don't think they know what they're doing, or they know what they're doing and they're doing it still as a sort of stopgap measure.
We'll create this problem for you. This problem is going to create unrest in Afghanistan. Your government will be destabilized. So either you give in to what we want, otherwise we will take these kind of actions against you. That's what's happening.
Pakistan now claims the policy came after efforts to exert pressure on Kabul in order to rein in the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan.
And another news I'm absolutely delighted to share with you, News9 Plus won 8 big awards at the prestigious News Television Awards. It includes Dialogue with Barun Das being awarded the most cerebral talk show. Let's watch this glimpse of the glittering awards ceremony.
News9 Plus wins big at Indian Television NT Awards. 8 top recognitions for the world's first news OTT. Special documentaries covering all genres of news coverage. Dialogue with Barun Das is the editorial choice for most cerebral talk show. Accolades for the overall packaging of the OTT platform. Redefining storytelling with incisive news analysis. News Television Awards affirm numero uno status of News9 Plus.
December 16th is the 52nd anniversary of the liberation of Bangladesh. Our special series, Nerves of Steel, captures the war that altered the history and geography of South Asia. Now, first up, our story on the Battle of Longewala. You've seen it in the movie Border, but we've got the words of the brave soldiers who fought this crucial battle. Download our app from the Play Store to watch this exciting series. Thank you for watching.
4th, 5th December 1971. 6 kilometers inside the international border, the border post of Longewala becomes the graveyard of a Pakistani armoured regiment with 40 tanks.
The entire Battle of Longewala is very strategic in its implication, because the Indian offensive in the desert was planned to the north of Longewala and Jaisalmer towards Rahim Yar Khan and that axis. India's 12th Division did not anticipate a Pakistani attack on the post of Longewala, but the Longewala post was part of the southern flank of 12th Division. It was just one company of 23 Punjab that was deployed in, at a company level. And if you look at it, Jaisalmer Air Base had only 4 hunters at that particular time. So actually, the operation was a well-planned surprise hook by the Pakistanis.
GHQ Pakistan Army gave very clear directions to GOC Pakistani Army not to let Indian Army come anywhere near here, to keep them away from here, to ensure that Pakistan GOC planned to attack Longewala. Otherwise, we had not planned to fight any defensive battle in our area.
It was the intervening night of 4th to 5th December when Colonel Dharamveer, then a young lieutenant, hears a noise in the distance. On probing further, he can't believe his eyes and immediately reported to Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri.
This part of the troops, under Captain Dharamveer, 20 men, they were sitting and watching. They started hearing the sound of tanks in the evening around 7:45, 8 o'clock. It was after last night. When they heard the sound, that is the time when some tanks were moving from Asutar to Ramgarh, then to Kishangarh for carrying out the offensive. Now, Major Chandpuri, he heard the tank knives on this side. Dharamveer told them to Chandpuri that tanks are being heard from that side also. So it was under confusion for some time. After another 1 hour or so, Dharamveer heard some more tanks. Some sound started growing louder and louder. Say about 12 o'clock, 11:30, 12, the tanks have started crossing the border. So Dharamveer confirmed it to Major Chandpuri. He says the tanks are crossing the border. That is the time when whole division, brigade headquarters and the battalion, they had become alert. Around 1:30 or so, they crossed the border and they stopped. Now that is the time that things started becoming a little doubtful. Why they have halted? Are they coming? Are they going back? That is about 2:15 or so. 3 medium RT shells landed in the post from behind. So when these shells exploded, the sound went up to Div headquarters and brigade headquarters. That is the time people started asking, who has fired? Where the shells have landed? That is the time when it was certain that Longewala is under attack.
Major Chandpuri decides to stay put and orders anti-tank mines to be laid around their post to stall the enemy's advance.
Rifle company at Longewala, commanded by Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri, was told to stick it out, stay there the night, and hold that post till the last. And they stuck it out.
He had some mines with him. He told him to just throw it random in front of the post. At least it may cause some delay to the tanks.
Under enemy attack, Major Chandpuri's company of over 100 soldiers are surrounded on all sides. His tactful deployment makes it impossible for the Pakistanis to move ahead.
Pakistanis were, they were actually wondering that, since they had beaten off 2 attacks, so they were wondering whether this is really a company or this is a larger force. So to that extent, a lot of credit goes to them.
2 RCL were sent from Sadewala to Longewala. They reached at about 3 o'clock, 3:15 or so. They were deployed, one at the main post in number 1 platoon, one in the right side there was another sand dune where number 3 platoon was deployed. Now when this tank came very close to the post, that is the time this tank was hit by the archer. When the tank was hit, it was a surprise to the enemy. There are two surprises. Number 1, there's a minefield. Number 2, there's a RCL guns there.
News9 Plus. Download now.